Hello and welcome to this special edition series of GreenFleet Talks in partnership with Leases. In episode 2, we're going to be considering the importance of capturing the drivers' hearts and minds. My name is Kate Armitage. I'm your host for the discussion today, and I'm delighted to be here with David Robertson, Sales Director at Leases, and Jules Tilstone, who's Managing Director at Stellantis Premium Brands UK. Hello, David, Jules, welcome.
Hi, Kate.
Hi, Kate.
Great. Look, I'm really excited about this conversation because we don't focus on the drivers enough, in my opinion. So let's dive straight in with what do drivers really care about when talking about electric vehicles? Jules, what do you think?
Well, I think the obvious first key point is actually the impact on their own pockets. So the great thing about the current benefit in kind scheme with electric is it's far below that of equivalent petrol and diesel engines, and that's clearly having an impact on take-up rates of full electric by company car drivers. So this financial year, the benefit in kind is at 2% versus on a sort of an equivalent powered average kind of company car being somewhere in the mid-20s. So that means the tax that a company car driver is paying is more hundreds than thousands, so 10 times less, which is obviously a fundamental piece of, I guess, encouraging, convincing drivers to consider full electric cars, as well as plug-in hybrids, of course, as well. The other piece for me is perhaps the unknown benefits of driving electric. So if for those who haven't driven a full electric car or a plug-in hybrid in electric mode, won't necessarily appreciate a lot of the benefits. You know, there are benefits in terms of the acceleration you get, the torque that you get on an electric car with no gear changes, so you have instant torque, which is fantastic. You get clearly less noise, less road noise, less engine vibration, all of those elements in terms of the driving style of the car. But also, not having to go to a petrol station is not a bad thing in terms of refueling.
One of my favourite things.
Absolutely. But also, always enjoy last winter preconditioning my plug-in hybrid car that I had at that point, which is a DS7, where I came out in the morning and it was already warmed. The seats were warmed. There was no ice on the screens, and compared to my neighbours, that was quite an enjoyable start to the day, and no delay in demisting and all of those other key things in the winter. And I guess that the other one that I would really point out is that it's a different driving style. You know, with regenerative braking, you do a lot less moving from accelerator to brake. Yeah. More just driving the car with the accelerator, and that means a smoother ride. It means less movement. It's an easier way of driving the car. On top of course, the environmental credentials. So, certainly for me, doing the occasional school run in a full electric car, you really appreciate the benefits of driving an electric car in a crowded area where you're not pumping out the fumes of a petrol or a diesel engine.
Yeah, the zero tailpipe emissions is a benefit for everyone, which is great. And I guess, Jules, but what you've highlighted here is the benefits, the undiscovered benefits that drivers who haven't switched to electric just don't get. That's not where their mind is at, is it? So there's the concerns versus the reality of driving an EV. And when I think about the concerns, and I've heard it many times in discussions, not just with fleets and fleet drivers, but with friends and family, it is that still the vehicle range comes up, time spent recharging the car, and the additional planning that's required, particularly for business needs drivers, because that is quite a big element, isn't it? And then the hassle of having to arrange a home charge point and all of those kind of things. David, I mean, do these all sound familiar concerns to you?
They do, and I can speak it's quite close to home actually, because a lot of those concerns and anxieties I've shared quite recently, because I've taken the plunge myself to move from an ICE car into an electric vehicle. I've chosen my next company car to be an electric vehicle. Now I do around about sort of 25 to 27,000 miles a year, a lot of long journeys back and forth to the office, and those concerns I've experienced, and want to make sure that I can get there and back without having to worry about or concern myself about charging, and will there be enough charge points, will the charge points be available when I get there, are they going to be in a state and they're not broken, and all of those things. But equally there are also concerns around the expense. How do I claim back electricity if I plug in my vehicle at home? Do I need to get a home charger myself and fix that to the wall? Is there a bit of inconvenience and things to consider there? So a lot of elements I can imagine fleet users and fleet drivers all experience and all go through, and almost have to go through that thought process and have that reassurance, I'm sure, from other people that have had that experience and gone through it and made it work for them, and try to almost consider how they plan journeys better, how they plan their and structure meetings, and making sure that they've got enough time then to allow for downtime and get to charge a vehicle up, and if they can find a charger that will deliver 80%, if you like, of battery in a short period of time, all of those things. So lots of concerns, lots of elements, and as I say, hit quite close to home at the moment, because I've just gone through that thought process myself. So it's quite
and which is great, because you absolutely cannot beat learning by doing. You think you know, but until you actually do it, you don't know. And of course, you had the advantage of understanding the technology a bit better and the different types of charging, whereas drivers that are coming to this absolutely cold may not understand the difference between AC and DC charging. We do still have charger mode connectors on the public charging network. Some charge points are tethered, some aren't. Some require RFID access, and so on and so on. So it can be quite challenging, and daunting, I think, for drivers.
I think the space is moving pretty quickly. The ecosystems are moving quickly. New chargers now, since public chargers since January now include contactless payment, which makes things life a little bit simpler for the driver. There's still a lot of different applications that exist for public charging, for route planning, with different visibility of charging rates, of availability, connected to the range of your car built in. We have in our vehicles e-route planning, which can support customers on their journeys. Clearly, ranges are increasing. So the Stellantis medium platform, for example, which will be the home for the new DS next year, which is a big, it's a D segment, so large coupe SUV, the next new model from DS. That has a WLTP range of over 400 miles. So that's a very different space. And then you couple that with the evolution and the deployment of the public charging network. The public charging network in the last 12 to 18 months has doubled in size.
Yeah.
And obviously that needs to continue to accelerate, because we're still behind some of the major countries in Europe, like France and Germany, for example. We're about half of where they are in similar kind of parks. So a lot is moving in the right direction to give more confidence to drivers to choose to go to electric, at a time probably when their companies are encouraging them to go to electric, because of their own corporate social responsibility charters of which clearly mobility is a key part of that. So I think the ecosystem is moving in the right direction. Is it moving fast enough? Probably not. And I think the other point, which I guess David will have a view on, is around the role of the company then educating the drivers. Because if you rewind to the days when I was working in the fleet arena, we had fleet managers in every company who were the go-to and the voice and the advisor to all company car drivers. They were physically in the office, as was everyone, and they were talking to people who were coming up to their next renewal, and they were giving them advice on what they should do next. As brands, we were able to go and run ride and drives at company headquarters, but now with the way that hybrid working has come around after obviously the COVID years, and HR taking more of the responsibility for company car management, or even outsourcing to leasers like leases, actually that point of contact, I guess, has been diluted or is at risk of being diluted, and having a robust plan where the company or the appointed responsible for advising the company car drivers step up to give that reassurance and that insight into that transition from ICE into full electric or into hybrid, whichever is the most suitable for the driver.
Yeah, Jules, and I mean, this is something that's very much on Lisa's mind, isn't it, David? Because you've introduced tools and solutions that take away a lot of those challenges and burdens around access to the public charging network, around reimbursement and claiming expenses.
Absolutely, and obviously the advantage, there's a lot more technology available, there's a lot more information, but also a lot more solutions that are available and readily available for the driver to take away, as we said earlier on, about some of those anxieties. And an example would be our partnership with Allstar. So we have a fuel card provider and a fuel card solution, which do not only for if you like standard petrol and diesel ability to be able to charge to the card. However, we can also use that for electric charging, where it doesn't actually even impact on the driver. So elements of the customer's electricity bill are paid directly via the company, via Allstar. So again, taking away a little bit more of that anxiety about if you're going to plug the vehicle into your home electric unit, are you going to be responsible for paying that and then having to claim it back? We can take that anxiety out of the equation, but also apps and lots of additional technologies that we can also provide to make the whole process and the whole journey a lot more easier, and help those drivers that may be having a little bit of anxiety and a bit of sleepless nights to make them have a nice rested night without having to worry about some of those concerns that we discussed earlier. Yeah,
and coupled with the in-vehicle software that Jules was discussing, if it's well thought through and planned by the fleet manager, this can be, a very seamless experience for the drivers.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, Kate. We need to package, it needs to be packaged up. What's right for the drivers? It's different if you're in a job need role where you're doing a lot of mileage every day. It might mean you need a different solution to a senior exec who's, perhaps doing a lot less mileage, a lot fewer journeys, where home charging effectively in a car with a decent range on electric means that they don't really have to worry about the public charging. They're either in the office and can use the in-office facility, or they're at home, and that will cover them for quite easily for a week's worth of travel. So yeah, it's horses for courses, but demystifying what is quite a complex ecosystem from an outsider perspective can make such a difference to the adoption rates of electric vehicles.
Yeah. Okay. And what about kind of other support that you can offer in terms of training and making sure that the drivers get a good enough experience and understanding of driving that vehicle before they fully commit?
I think from a brand perspective, we're just in the mix of launching new Junior. So the first full electric Alfa Romeo arrives in our showrooms in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So exciting times. So it's a small SUV, very sporty as you would expect from Alfa Romeo, but the first full electric. So what we're doing at the moment is ensuring that our teams in the retailers are fully comfortable with the ecosystem, home charging, public charging, complexities, and again demystifying for them with living in the car, because they need to live it to understand how to live with electric. That then allows them to give a really positive experience to potential customers, whether they're in the fleet area or retail. I think what's really important is, first of all, that needs to be tailored to the customer. So with electric vehicles, it's not the same way as living with a petrol or a diesel, in terms of you wait until you're on empty and then you go and fill the car up. There are opportunities, whether you're going shopping, whether you're going to the gym, where you can park in a bay that has a public charger, and just keep topping the car up, which means you don't necessarily have to have a home charger, of course. So it's not just about running to near empty and then plugging the car in and then continuing the journey. It's a different way. But I think with that in mind, what's really important is extended test drives.
Yeah.
It's not about driving the car around a 5-mile block and then coming back and going, do you know what, it's great, I'll have it. It's about understanding how you can live in your lifestyle with a 24, 48-hour test drive, to be reassured that you have the right choice of product, the right choice of powertrain, and of course that a range that suits your needs, and public charging solution that obviously fulfills that.
Yeah, when as you were talking, Jules, I was kind of thinking, because those first, let's say, 5 days, and I've been driving EVs since 2010 in one form or another, and everything has evolved so dramatically. But when I think about those first 5 days, with all of the training, with all of the help and advice and support, and with all the apps and whatever, you still just need a little bit of time to really come to grips with, okay, the first time I need to find that charge point in that particular car park. The first time I need to, I've reversed into the parking space, I've got out of the car, and I've now realized that the cable doesn't fit because I should have driven in or whatever. But just that first week's experience of going electric, there will be teething problems, but nothing disastrous. And you only make those mistakes once, don't you? It's and it very quickly becomes a distant memory and just a great driving experience.
I think you're right, and you need a sounding board as well. So certainly from a brand perspective, we encourage second handover appointments. So you have your first handover, and of course the first handover customers are super excited about getting into their new car. There's generally a lot of paperwork, and all the customer wants to do is get in the car and drive away, because they've got the smell of the new car, and maybe the concentration on some of the more fundamentals of how you're going to operate the car are put to one side. So offering that second handover is really important, as is the support of the community who already drive electric cars. And I think probably David's got some examples of kind of the champion programs that some companies run that can support drivers certainly in those early stages.
Well, I mean, we talk about EV champions all the time, David, because there's barely a fleet that I talk to who hasn't discovered that they have this amazing resource from their existing EV drivers.
Yeah, completely, and invariably that is potentially somebody who's been very reluctant to make that move initially. They've gone and taken the plunge, they've moved into an EV, and all of a sudden they become a champion for that product and that way of driving. And I think almost to summarise what the points that you've both made very clear there. It's this journey for many drivers and many people. It's more of a revolution rather than an evolution, isn't it? It's a kind of it's a big change for these for these drivers. But actually, once they find their feet with it, and as you say, after the first 5 days, 7 days of using it, they find that actually this is not a bigger jump as what I perceived. It's just a slightly different way of driving, of managing journeys and managing the process, really. So,
it's surprising how quickly it becomes normal.
Yes.
And then, of course, it's surprising how quickly you realise how much you dislike driving manual petrol or diesel vehicle. You know, when you do have to go back, you're thinking, what was I worried about here? Because this is crazy. And Jules, when you were talking about the preparations for the new Alfa Romeo and the dealer training, I mean, they're your first line of defense EV champions, aren't they? You know, if your dealership employees and staff are on board, then you know, that's it. They can spread the word.
Absolutely, and again, if the importance of them spending time in full electric cars as well as the other models that we offer is absolutely fundamental, because they need to understand that also the concerns that potential customers will have when they come into the showrooms by going through the process themselves and being able to confidently answer any questions that come from customers about some of the, as David said, it's not an evolution, it's a revolution, isn't it? It's you know, it's a big step, or it seems a big step, and they need to be well equipped to answer any concerns and allay any fears that customers have from moving. And also, going back to the earlier conversation, demonstrating the positives, because there's too much negativity around. You know, some of the smaller challenges. I don't know. I recall going back to a couple of Christmases ago when the media were reporting on Christmas Eve, you know, some queues at some public charging. You know, that this is a one-off, but it was massive across the media, and of course that turns people off considering the change when. They're much more comfortable with staying with what they've known for, you know, the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So yeah, it's about making sure that customers who are looking at the option to switch really understand the full benefits, because I know from my side, not going to a dirty petrol or diesel pump on a regular basis and being able to plug in at home is one huge benefit that perhaps isn't obvious to those who haven't yet experienced it.
Massive. And on behalf of all the women who drive electric, I think that's a bigger benefit than perhaps is realised, because petrol stations can be quite intimidating places, particularly the large ones, and it's quite nice just to escape home and you know, plug your car in on your own driveway. We've covered a lot. So we were discussing winning drivers' hearts and minds. So what's keeping drivers awake at night? Hopefully they will sleep a little bit better this evening with the benefit of our podcast. David and Jules, thank you very much for your input this morning. It's been fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And of course, thank you to Leases for joining GreenFleet Talks. That is about all we've got time for, but please tune into GF365 again soon.